I believe there's just one outstanding PR on bundler spec regarding canonical mempools. Dror or Shahab, did you have any comments on that, on what I said? I think it just publishes a list of canonical mempools as a separate.
I need to take a look. We are still a bit busy with the audit, so
Right.
sorry for that. But
No worries. I mean, I have assumed the minimum stake of 0.1 ETH for Ethereum testnets, and for Mumbai, I assumed it's 0.5. But do we have a consensus on what we should set up as the minimum stake for the canonical mempool on these testnets?
on testnet, it actually doesn't mean much. You can put whatever value we like. We just want to make sure that there is a value. Actually, add stake requires you to have some value. It can be one way. It doesn't matter. So, and right now, I believe the spec, the reference bundler, even though we didn't pay something, the reference bundler simply check there is something greater than 0. Because it's either good against attack or it's not. And what is the good value is something that for production network is something that we still need to research and understand. Does it block? Does it give enough incentive to prevent attack? So if no one is going to attack on one hand, or our bundlers are strong enough to withstand whatever load there is of such a drop mempool, then we don't care. Obviously, both of these will not hold. If there is a possibility to attack, I'm sure that someone will try to exercise the system. So we do need to put some value. Now, it will take time until there's going to be a large stake that someone will want to put a large stake to attack the system. You need to put value. How much is big? I don't know. To put $1 million in order to block the network for, I don't know, an hour or two, or I don't. Is it something you consider an attack or not? The point is that we need to make it configurable that if we find that the system, someone is trying to block the system, it uses the fact that the stake is only 1 day, and he blocks the system for $1 million a day. And so at that time, we probably will advertise that we raise the stake from 1 day to 1 month, or raise the stake from $1,000 to $10,000. I'm not sure about the numbers. Raise it enough so that the attack will stop. We need to be flexible enough in the bundlers so that when there is a call and this network is under attack, we can change it. Once there is a mechanism for that in place, the actual stake doesn't matter. We need to block the attack. If we can, I believe no one will try to attack.
But given that it's part of the YAML file that we publish or determine the mempool ID, should then I take this out because it could be configured or changed at a later point of time? Because that would trigger a change in the mempool ID hash, right? IPFS hash, if we continue to change the minimum stake.
Okay, let's say we change the mempool ID. What does it mean? People need to use...
The canonical mempool ID is hard-coded within each bundler in order to publish or propagate the user ops. So, if we are changing,
the question is whether it is hard-coded. I think it is configured. Yes, it is a value we publish. We don't want to change, but this is exactly what I'm saying. Let's say we find out that no, it's trickier than that, right?
I think the simplest
like this. Let's say we find out there is an attack on the network. So the bundlers, all bundlers now switch. Yeah, they stop using the vulnerable canonical mempool and they switch to a mempool is because we raise the number. This is now.
So then we have to republish the republish what is a canonical mempool, and that would trigger a lot of changes in the bundler implementation. I think at the moment, all of them have these mempool IDs for each chain pre-configured within the code base. It's not a configurable, what do you say, value in each bundler. It's something that's assumed to be a constant, at least for each entry point.
Like anything,
Am
it
I
is
right?
constant until we need to change it. A change could be there is a major upgrade for the version of the mempool, and a
Yeah.
change could be we just found a bug, and in order to resolve it, we need to change the mempool. So making it hard-coded, making configuration values like stake value hard-coded into the code, I don't think it's a good idea.
No, it's not in the code. It's on the YAML file, right? That we publish as the canonical mempool YAML. If I were to take out the minimum stake amount from the YAML field, then it's fine. We can continue to use the same mempool ID, but the minimum stake is something that you can configure directly within the bundler instance. It would still propagate user ops in the same mempool ID, but just the minimum stake amount is different.
Okay, I'm going a little backward. When we defined what is a canonical, non-canonical mempool, we said that a mempool ID, we have multiple mempool IDs. The idea is that when you validate a user op, you validate it and find the first canonical mempool it belongs to, you submit it on that canonical mempool. If it doesn't support a canonical mempool, you find all non-canonical one and publish it on all canonical ones.
Correct.
Okay, so let's say there is a public mempool with a low stake.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out that low stake is okay, I need to think on the floor. I cannot think it right now, because we find that low stake is too risky. So we want to raise it. So we want to switch away from, I, as a bundler, want to switch away from a mempool that can grief me. So we publish a new mempool with a higher stake. And I believe all bundlers will switch to, will include also the higher stake mempool, okay. And bundlers can decide whether they keep accepting on the old mempool or not.
So this operationally would require us to publish a new canonical mempool, and for bundlers to dynamically support this or not, or choose to support it or not.
The idea of mempool ID is to define a configuration. If you can change the configuration without changing the mempool ID, then we lost some of what we wanted from the mempool ID. It is possible to change the configuration, and then some bundlers will accept it, some bundlers will not accept it, which cause failure and user operation.
Right. So then the definition of canonical keeps changing, right? Do we, assuming we publish a canonical mempool for Sefolia right now with minimum stake as 0.1 ETH, and we find that it's possible to greet the bundler, so you increase the minimum stake to say 0.5 or 1, then are we then changing the canonical mempool ID on Sefolia now? The old one is no longer the canonical, the new one with a higher stake is canonical.
Again, there can be multiple canonical mempools.
Uh,
the difference, you find the first one. We have a tricky point about canonical mempool should be either non-overlapping, like different entry point is a different canonical mempool.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or to start with or if they do overlap, we have to order them with the restricted one first. That is, if I receive, no, I'm trying to think about the propagation in this case, but I need to think about it. I'm not sure right now. how to order it, because I'm trying to think about the flow. The flow is there is a canonical mempool. We found out that it is vulnerable, which means that by vulnerable, I mean someone is currently submitting user operations that pass through this canonical mempool and grief all bundlers that use this canonical mempool.
Right.
It could be that now there are thousands of user operations going into the system by entities that, and it's too cheap for them to perform this attack. The way to protect this attack is get out of this mempool and use a mempool that is good enough. So yes, you change canonical mempool. I switch to another canonical mempool. This user operation will not be accepted in that canonical mempool. Other user operations that are not malicious could be accepted either in the restricted one or the non-restricted one. But since I dropped off the non-restricted ones, I will only accept those user operations through the restricted mempool, even if they don't use any state. And I will communicate with anyone who accepts this new canonical mempool. And all bundlers that use only the old non-restrictive vulnerable canonical mempool, I will stop communicating with them, yes. Because if I do, I will drop it on a case of spamming.
Yeah.
Sending me user operation that get dropped.
There's also wording in the spec that says, like, for a bundler that wants to support 2 canonical mempools for the same entry point, there's wording in the spec that says that canonical mempools will be published in some sort of precedence order.
Exactly. Something we need to.
Yeah. So basically, the order for this would be, like Drew said, the more restrictive canonical mempool would be ordered first. So if a user operation works on that mempool, you would just send it out on that one, and if it doesn't, then you'd send it out on the less restrictive one. Although I do think most bundlers would likely just drop support for the less restrictive P2P mempool canonical mempool, after a transition period.
Look, if the attack is underway, you will want to switch
more quickly, yeah.
Because as long as you accept the if the attacker is nice, it only slows down bundlers. Let's say the attacker is nice, and he takes only 90% of your CPU power. Okay, it still allows you to pass transactions. So theoretically, you could continue and work with the non-restrictive canonical mempool. But probably, if it performs an attack, it tries to suffocate you completely. It will send 200% of your CPU power of user operations. So yes, at that point, you want to switch to a usable canonical mempool and drop completely from the unusable one.
Yeah.
I don't see much place for transition except for someone who has a super huge bundler and the attacker doesn't try to attack him.
Okay.
I don't see a grade here much. Probably everybody will switch very fast to the new one.
So we do very fast. It means it should be a configurable option on the bundler and not something that is hard coded in any way, as it is right now.
Yes. This.
What are you saying? Sorry.
What we are saying is that these stake parameters, which we define in a mempool ID, should be configurable and not hard coded.
So yeah, I agree.
If we say, the canonical mempool is under attack, we switch to a stake which is a $10K. Sorry, all bundlers, you need to stake more. Otherwise, sorry, all the paymaster, you need to stake more. And everybody switch to this one. Anyone who doesn't get DOSed for this time being.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, what I meant to say. Sorry, Shaf. Go on.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying that the mempool ID for each network itself, the canonical mempool ID for each network itself should be configurable rather than hard-coded within the bundler. That will allow a seamless switching over in case we decide to publish a new canonical mempool.
Yes, it's just not seamless. You do need to go.
I mean, you would need to, but at
So-
least you don't need a code change and release a new version in order to do that.
Yeah, okay, so I think that we should
Probably
separate
a-
the mempool ID and the mempool ID should be calculated from all the parameters, but not all parameters should be configured the same way, probably. So in this example, like some parameters, like the entry point address, should be configured probably by a file. But if we find a way to deterministically calculate the stake required in the canonical mempool for all bundles, like for that each bundle like deterministically computes it, then they can derive the same mempool ID just by looking at the network, for
So
example.
that
If
that
we
would
have-
trigger a change in the spec.
If we have an algorithm to define,
Yes, that's what I thought. That's what I thought about.
then the mempool ID, then the mempool will define.
Yeah, exactly.
Minimum
Just
state
think
is-
about the difficulty of a
okay.
network. It's like
Yeah.
it's very similar to that.
Yeah.
Like, the nodes know. Okay, once they get to a certain point, like okay, the network slowed down. They need to reduce the difficulty. It's like you have a deterministic way to configure it in all on all nodes. So it should be the same thing here. The problem that we face is that the stake should probably be derived at least we need to take into consideration, for example, the total value locked, like what it stakes for the network when we look at a possible attack. Now that's
Okay.
something that is not easily
Let
defined.
me simplify it. The mempool ID, from the mempool definition file, the code of the bundler should deterministically know what the stake is. Right now,
Yes.
it is a value. It is a number. It is a number
Right.
specified in the native account. Another way to define it, like let's say, take the USDC Oracle, the average of the last 24 hours, it should be above $1,000. This is again deterministic. I'm not saying we should do it that. We can put a
I
number.
know. That's what I was saying. Now I took it a step further in the discussion.
Yes.
Said, okay,
If-
how can we actually define what
Okay.
a good deterministic way to compute the stake?
Yes, if we
In the stake
at
itself.
some point of time we find an algorithmic way for a code in the bundler to calculate it, then we define it that way. It needs to be a factor of a given number over this calculation. Okay, and then all bundlers will add this calculation into their code and use that mempool ID. We are not there yet. Right now, we still specify it at native value. I think we could, but right now we still don't. We could define it in a USD value.
Yeah, I mean,
So that will automatically compensate for fluctuations in the network. Okay.
yeah, wouldn't it be better if we could deterministically determine the mempool ID itself? At the moment, we are using IPFS hash. So, say if you were to change the minimum stake from 10 USD to 1000 USD, the configuration
Yes, that
parameters
changes the
would-
mempool ID.
Yeah.
It should change the mempool ID. The thing is that some parameters are going to be configured in a file, an YAML file, as you said,
Correct.
for example, and the stake should be calculated. But then, after you have all of these, you derive the mempool ID, and it should be the same for everyone.
Yes.
Of course.
Look, but what I'm saying is something like this. Anything the bundler can do automatically, canonical way, we should put in code, and then we don't need a mempool ID for. Why we use mempool definition file? For all the things that a human need to validate they are valid. And the
Correct.
human is the operator. So how it puts into the code this number, it put the mempool ID, the ID or the URL where the mempool definition YAML file is, which is the same. Putting mempool ID means you can pull it from IPFS. Putting a URL is good, just as good.
I understand. I follow the reason of the YAML file. I'm just saying that adding the dependency or basing the mempool ID to the IPFS hash is what introduces this complexity of not being able to deterministically determine a mempool ID if there's a change to the minimum stake.
Then
So if
forget IPFS hash. The reason for hash goes like this. It should be a file.
Yeah.
And a file is public, so we could publish it on GitHub or on URL on some
Yep.
website. The point
Yep.
is, how do you validate that this file is correct?
Fair
What you
enough.
do on the internet, you download the MD5 of the content file from some authority. Like on Telegram, we publish this MD5. The usage of IPFS only gives us just one small thing. From this hash, you can, if you like, download the file itself.
Right.
If you want to use, don't forget about IPFS, put a URL and a hash,
Mhm.
and just in your code validate that the hash matches the file so that it is correct.
Right.
It's a way to say, if you don't, we don't have to use a, if we decide that we publish it in a different way,
Mhm.
then it
No,
could
that's
be.
fine.
We just
So
wanted to, that the authority, the channel that Telegram would say this is the authorized version, it's going to be something short.
Okay. So I'll submit a PR then to
publish a specific address.
Yeah. I'll submit a PR to change that. We'll no longer probably consider IPFS hash and make it more deterministic. Calculation of mempool ID.
I still think it should be IPFS hash, but okay, we should have a hash and validate the hash. By using IPFS hash, it means that you don't have to download it from GitHub or download it from another URL. You can download it from IPFS if you like. Don't have to. But the hash, yes, we do have a hash over the configuration.
Yeah, but then I'm not. Elaborating this correctly. The scenario that you mentioned earlier, where we have published the canonical mempool, we have an IPFS hash of it, but we determine that there's an attack going on, so you change the minimum stake. Now, what happens then? It's there is an onus on the core
configuration, but we change the configuration. It's a new configuration now. New configuration means it also have a new hash.
Of course. So that means that core team have to publicize that information, notify, and all bundlers have to change their bundlers to support the new canonical mempool, and that there's a there's a process involved there, right? You cannot expect a quick turnaround. Are we okay with this setup?
Look, first of all, it is an emergency.
Yeah.
We could say, look, we think there is something, probably it is better that over the next few months, you add another mempool. This is the slow path. There's an upgrade, we are pushing some change. Okay, people will start switching, adding support for that. That's one way. The other, that there is an emergency. The network is right now under attack. Probably some bundlers are completely out of service because of a denial of service attack. Okay? How do you react to that? Okay, they can turn it off. They can do a restart. It usually doesn't help. So they need to take an action, otherwise they're out of service. So the action I'm saying is switch to a new canonical mempool.
Canonical mempool.
If there is a long turnaround, during this long turnaround, they are down because we started from a point where we are under attack. How do we get out of it? So if we are lucky, the attack takes only 95% of your CPU. Right. So you are bogged down, but still can work. What if you don't? Sometimes at one point, once we have a mempool on Sepolia, we'll try that. Try to put the network, to stress the network and see how well we handle this case. And by a mechanism that let us fall back and fast, we will prevent such attack attempts. If attacker know they need to put aside $1 million, $2 million to make an attack that the bundle communication can bring up the network to fully workable within minutes, hours, I don't know. It mitigates the attack. Hopefully. If not, we need a better mechanism. Actually, I'm not sure how much of this attack protection exists in Ethereum itself. We're talking about attackers that basically gain nothing. It will take a long time until the network gets a wide adoption that such attack, it's a denial of service attack. Like, when will you gain actual benefit, monetary benefit out of attacking the system this way? maybe when there are DeFi protocols with a large percentage of users over account abstraction and a very large number at stake, and you want to block this protocol for an hour or two in order to gain some monetary benefit out of it. I think it will take a long time until that happens. And in the meantime, we're putting a mechanism that we can improve our response time.
Right.
Not at this moment. Let's start with the mempool first and then do a quick turnaround of mempool IDs.
Fair enough. So that's fine. In terms of status, I think on Etherspot side, we are compatible with the latest version of the P2P spec. I just wanted to ask how Dan, Vid, and Sharif are doing from their side.
Yeah, we haven't implemented the latest changes yet, but we are working on it.
Okay. Dan,
Yeah,
yourself?
we're still looking to prioritize this work internally. Have a few new moving pieces this quarter that are making it hard to prioritize, but we'll get to it soon.
Yeah, I know
Okay.
this. It's a parallel direction to supporting v.7.
Yeah.
It's very close to a closure. We are working now on making the bundle and the spec tests work with it. It's the latest release. Hopefully that by the time, close to the time the audit finishes, we have a reference bundle that works. That said, all the P2P work is I don't think there is any conflict in the code between the two versions.
Right.
We want to have support for that in the reference bundle too. It'll take some time, but we want version 7 first.
So given that it's likely the other teams would need few more weeks to get ready, so do you then recommend that the Sefolia P2P bundler is tested with version 7.7 rather than 6, or?
Well, it depends on your resources. If you have more resources to work on both, would be best. If you are constrained and you are the same person to do all I think that the version 7 is a bit more pressed because there is a chain reaction. We need to get version 7 out. Only then Wallet seriously will start working on it, because unless they have a place to start testing it, they can't even work on it. And then, yes, we do. Eventually, I don't think we'll have P2P of both versions in parallel. We could, but I don't see much reason to do that. So we want to push the version 7 out more rapidly. So it's better that to focus on adding that once we have version 7 out, to move version 6 into a maintenance mode and push all the efforts, including P2P version 7.
So the boot node we are running on Sefolia right now is compatible with 6. We are still doing changes for 7. I mean, as soon as we are ready, we can run another boot node if required, but we'll take a call then.
Look, the way I see it, and I said it before, version 0.6 and 0.7 are incompatible with each other. There is no shared component. So even the staking is completely different. If you have a paymaster, you need to be staked on both. If an account is either here or there, it's not both. So it is different server. So it is the reference bundler will not support both. The reference bundler will be only new. And the way I think of it is, logically, if you want a bundler to support both, it's actually two servers behind the proxy that redirects either to this and that. It's not. It's not a single server that supports both. Yeah. Logically, in the code.
Yeah, that's how we are looking at it.
Could be shared code, but I think it's I don't know. It's your call how to implement it.
No, we are treating them as two separate servers. It's just that I'm not sure how many wallet teams have their wallets compatible and ready for 7.0 at the moment, at least on
Oh,
Sephoria.
of course. Oh, there's zero. There's
Yeah.
zero because the version 0.7 is not finalized yet.
Right.
Very close. And if we change the struct, right now, 99% that the struct will not change anymore. But if it does, then this version 7 is thrown away before it was even installed. So yes, we say it is done when the audit is finished, within a week or a few weeks from now. And then everything is fully closed. This is the final version. That said, of course, you can start work on the code. And right now, there is no bundle that can work with the latest code.
Yeah. So yeah, that's on the status. And the other question I had was on what Hazim had posted in the Telegram group with respect to Tracer. So I was curious to understand what was the change that the Runler team, Alchemy, have done to the JavaScript Tracer, and how is it different from the reference implementation?
We wrote our own tracer. So it's completely different. I think it was definitely inspired by the reference bundler tracer. So I can't tell you exactly what we did that made it so our tracer didn't time out.
The reference tracer never tried to be efficient. It tried a little, but very little. For example, I'm thinking of it, I'm using regular expression inside. Simply because I didn't want to do an OR list, a very long this or that or that, or that. So I checked with the regular expression. That's inefficient, especially with JavaScript, which will recompile this regular expression over and over again. It would be much, much better to use, for example, the opcode numbers and do some handling of that. But the best thing is not optimize on JavaScript, but to switch to a native one, which is on our list. As I said, one of the problems of the tracer as it is today, if and when we want to whitelist a contract, let's say we have a contract that uses gas opcode. This is the example. Some opcodes, like it is possible to use gas opcode in a good way that will not be able to use for an attack, but it's impossible to be statically analyzed as such. So it will require some whitelisting. Right now, it is impossible with the architecture of the tracer to perform such whitelist because we can collect opcodes at a level of an entity. All the opcodes used while you're doing account validation are collected into a single structure. So if one account, one contract had to be whitelisted, you can't run this whitelisting after the tracing is done. You have to modify the tracer to understand a whitelisting. And I wanted the tracer to be as static, as monolithic as possible, to do everything post-tracing. Because right now we have tracing and then parsing the traced output. And the way to do it is that tracing should be closer to call tracer. Call tracer perform a collection at different call site on every call site separately. And if we collected opcodes in the storage in such manner, then the output will be a little bit more verbose, but will be easier to reason about different contracts and different things. And then the tracer will be a subclass or modification of a standard call tracer. It's a call tracer, but also traces the Ketchak and the opcodes. So I want to switch to such tracer format, and then we can use a native code for that.
Okay.
And then once that will be native, it will be much more performant. And then and then the actual parsing will not be tightly coupled with the implementation of the tracer. It's going to be a more generic tracer, and as if not 4327 specific. It's not really true. It is, but it's not that we put actual whitelisting logic or such logic inside, but making the tracer more generic, so we can act the external parser.
Okay. So yeah, that's all I had from my side. Does anybody else have any questions?
Only thing for me, and it's not pressing, given that I know you guys are changing a lot of things, but we do have a few PRs still open against bundler spec tests.
Okay, we take a look at them.
And one PR that Dror you approved, but it just hasn't been merged, and I don't have write access to the bundler itself. Just changing one of those response codes. But small stuff, nothing major. So those are just been open for a little bit.
Take a look. Either me or Shachar will take a look and try to merge them.
No worries.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it on our side. We're I think with all of those with these PRs, that gets us to compliant with the latest spec tests, but I'm sure you guys are adding a bunch more and changing everything for 0.7, so about to break our compliance, but we'll get recompliant on 0.7 when we do that implementation.
So do we.
Yeah, and hopefully we are actually simplifying a couple of things, I believe. So maybe it will be easier. Let's see. Once we do it on our bundler, we will tell you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Is that all?
Yeah.
No, okay. And yeah, have a nice day, and let's meet in 2 weeks. Yes.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.